So you're living this kind of fast life, hanging out with the
Mhm.
wrong people. You
Mhm.
said you're what, 16 years old now?
Yeah. And by the time I was like 18 going on 19, I was kicked out of the house for good reasons. But
Yeah.
my parents asked me to leave because I was bringing things into their home as well. I ended up having a pretty decent, 9 to 5 office job. I started living outside of the house and I had a good friend of mine, and that's who kind of started introducing me into, dancing or
Okay. You were
burlesque.
18, 19 years old.
Yeah, yeah. So I was very, very young.
And what was your office job, the 9 to 5?
Yeah, I was a personal assistant. Well, I used to work at Chick-fil-A. That was my first job. So I
Okay.
was one of those like chipper, looked super innocent, was super bad
Yes.
type of
Okay.
young girls. And a lady walked in and she was like, I love your personality. I want you to be my personal assistant. So I would assist her at a senior living community. She was the executive director. And I would assist her with paperwork and answering phones. So.
Okay, gotcha. And then, okay, so now you're doing this, but I'm sure that's
Mhm.
not like the most fulfilling or monetary
No.
rewarding thing.
Yeah.
So you have a friend who's like, we should dance.
Yeah.
Did she already dance?
No, but her boyfriend said that his ex-girlfriend danced and made a lot of money. And
Okay.
then my friend was like, "Hey, this is something we can do when you get off of work." And we could first start off. I first started off at the reception office, taking all the payments there at the club. And then she worked as a waitress. So we scoped it out for about a month or two.
Yeah, no,
Always
I remember like working at the clubs. It was always like the really sweet girls who worked up front and maybe like they were kind of watching the
Mm-hmm.
environment to see if they could do it.
Yeah, that was
But
totally.
yeah, so okay, so were you afraid like even going into that environment or not really because you were kind of just you weren't dancing yet?
Yeah, I wasn't afraid because I wasn't, dancing yet. And I was really, good at, answering the phones and, what I'm saying, the customer service. So I was, not scared at that point, but I did know that, her more so her desire was to start, doing it. But I was just like, okay, like I'm down for the cause, That's kind of how it all started.
Okay, so tell us what your first day slash like audition was like.
I actually don't remember too much about it because while I was working in reception, that's when I started actually experimenting with like drugs. So while I was still there, I kind of brought that with me into it for starting off. So I was always kind of somewhat on something in the
Yeah.
beginning, but I don't think I was, necessarily that scared. I think I've been unusually confident. Sorry, probably very cringe, but yeah, I was
Mhm.
super, just like, okay, whatever, here I am. And, I thought it was fun. Thought I was getting paid to have, fun. And I was like, wow, this is, something cool. I didn't think I was going to be doing it forever, but I
Yeah.
was like, this could catapult me into, I always, through acting and stuff, that fame or whatever, that desire was. I'm like, maybe I can meet someone and then they can, set me up and
Yes, you thought maybe you could get noticed.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was scoping for a husband when I was dancing.
Mhm.
Obviously, like the worst environment to scope for a husband. But I remember thinking, like, I might meet like a really wealthy man in
Mhm.
here.
Mhm. Yeah.
But looking back, it's like I would not want that to be my husband. I
Oh,
found him.
no. They'll end up spending money on somebody else and
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, so like at first it's fun. Did you ever
Mhm.
have like a moment where you're like, yeah, this is not so fun anymore? Or like, did anything bad ever happen to you in that environment that made it become like real for you?
Yeah, towards the end, I was dancing and I was, felt like I was having a great time and I was taking, lots of different things. And one night I thought a girl at the club gave me an ecstasy, but she ended up giving me like 2 Xanax. And I was not used to that. And I fell down this large flight of stairs and got carried back up. But I was like, no, I still have to go down there and work. So I went down there and girls were trying to take care of me because I was like alone in like one of the back rooms for like hours, like crying. And something probably really did happen to me. I ended up the next day going up to the managers and asking for the recordings to see what happened to me, and they wouldn't show me. So, from then on, I was, kind of even coping even more afterwards too, in a way, with drugs because I didn't even want to know, what happened.
And do you think it was like something that happened with one of the clients?
I'm pretty sure because when I was that young, there's certain clubs that you can work at. If you're 21 and over, you can work at better clubs. So these clubs were pretty dark because they don't allow alcohol. There's a lot of creeps.
That's really interesting because that is something I wanted to ask you because you said you were dancing in downtown LA. So I
Mm-hmm.
was curious, like, because I know that there's some very expensive, like luxury clubs in that sort of environment, but you were kind of on the south side of it.
I went to multiple, so I started off at a really good one, and
Okay.
that's where I was working in the office, but they were still the same thing because when you're under 21, it's fully nude. So bad things could happen to you a lot easier than at 21 and over. So there was so many young girls that were being like literally some girls were even going in with like a fake ID. Like they were 17 years old working there, and the management does not have your back if any type of assault happens to you. I worked at quite a lot of different clubs. When I finally did turn 21, that was the most high end club, and that's where like I met lots of celebrities, and but that's when things got very spiritually dark for me, was more so then.
So what was the spiritual darkness that you experienced?
um well, we met a lot of very wealthy people who are, in the rap scene and stuff like that. And I, this whole time, was into like astrology and palm reading. So I made it like just my thing. So I would read people's palms, and I would, guess their birthdays correctly because I was on, and I thought that I was better at doing that when I was on drugs. But it was just because the more that I was on, the more I was able to receive information, pretty much.
From demons.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
then it
wow.
got so bad, I would just black out and not even, sometimes I would even go in almost sober and I would completely black out. And people would say, like, yeah, you were just a different person.
It was just like demonic takeover.
Yeah. The more higher end club had the most spiritual warfare there. I remember a guy came in one time and he looked around and he looked at me and he's like, oh my goodness. He's like, this place is just like Sodom and Gomorrah. And I was like, because I knew what that meant. And I
Uh-huh.
was just like, yeah.
That's crazy because, okay, so I've talked about this a lot in my testimony too, that it was the new age spirituality and belief
Hmm.
system that made me feel not just okay with being a dancer, but like empowered by it. Like
Hmm.
when I was in that belief system, believing, false teachings from demons, I like
Hmm.
hardcore thought that stripping and, sexuality and all this stuff was empowering and healing. And
Hmm.
I remember like I did a very similar thing. Like I liked to help people. I thought astrology at the time was just like advanced psychology. And
Hmm.
so I thought I was helping people by figuring out their natal charts, their sun, their
Hmm.
moon, their
Yep.
rising, where all
I
the
did the
planets
same
were.
way.
And it kind of gives you like something to talk about too that's
Hmm.
not as awkward, like in that kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, so that's interesting that you said that like most spiritually dark place was the highest end one with lots of celebrities because going back to one
Hmm.
of the first things we mentioned, like I hear it all over the music, like these new age, modern
Hmm.
day pagan beliefs
Hmm.
that these
Hmm.
rappers and celebrities believe in and
Hmm.
indoctrinate people just
Hmm.
subliminally through the music that they're producing.